I worked for 3 presidents, and yes, I believe they changed the world. And working so closely with President Reagan and former President Bush and the current president allowed me to see them in ways that you didn't get to see them. I actually watched as they sought a close relationship with God and weren't afraid to read the Bible or find comfort in prayer. And I tell you that because that's something we just don't tend to talk about very much. We just came out of an election, and that election was all about the word change. And I've been through other elections, and it seems like every election ends up being about change. But I'm comforted that all of the change almost finds the same document to give strength during it. And that document is the Bible. It can be the Hebrew Bible or the good news of the gospel. But the one thing that doesn't change is when leaders must make tough decisions are the values that come from the Bible. You know, former President Reagan, former President Bush, and the current president faced challenges and decisions that are almost beyond our comprehension. They weren't the ones that we argued about during campaigns or felt passionately about from a principle or a philosophy, or even as partisans. They weren't Republican or Democrat. And I came to recognize what they really did was recognize that they had to make tough decisions. And they weren't the decisions that they argued about or debated or challenged us to understand. They ended up being lonely decisions. And there's no greater challenge than a decision that sends young people into a responsibility to help the president keep his oath. And when you think about it, the job description for the president isn't what we talk about during a campaign. It's not what we argue about around the dining room table. It really comes from that oath that is taken on what will probably be a cold winter day in January. And it's the shortest oath taken by anybody who serves. An oath that calls for them to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. And everyone who has ever taken that oath adds words that were not written in the Constitution. So help me God. And while the inaugural addresses will probably be the issues that we talk about, the job description is the one that we never think about. The responsibility to preserve, protect, and defend that Constitution. And you know, that oath is something that the president cannot keep by himself. He wants to. I'm sure President-elect Obama wants to keep that oath all by himself. But that's just not the way it works. The president needs help, and the help comes from a White House staff. The only reason the White House staff exists is to help the president do his job. It's the only bureaucracy not created by Congress. It's created to help the president. But ultimately, the help comes from people who are all volunteers, unlike my generation. And many of them are 18, 19, 20 years old. And they put on a uniform. And they take 2 oaths. And the first oath is a pretty common oath. I took it. I took it when I got elected to the legislature in Massachusetts. Protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But then those young men and women take another oath. It's a little bit longer. And it's an oath that puts a burden on one person, because the oath calls for them to follow the command of the commander-in-chief. And it does not have a conditional clause to it. It doesn't say if. The politics are right, the UN gives you permission, the French are on board. Doesn't say any of that. And that's the burden the president carries, because he could not keep his oath without those people keeping their oath. And I believe those people can keep their oath using the same foundation that allows the president to have the strength to keep his oath. And that's the Bible.